Drones can capture what normal eyes can't. They fly in the sky above the mortal plane and see things that are not meant to be captured. From waves of fish to a mysterious crop circle, here are 20 most chilling things caught on drones. Number 20. Waves of fish. When you first look at this footage, you may think that you're seeing something well beyond what can be on Earth, something rather science fiction. But instead, what you're seeing is a massive school of fish traveling together through the water, and they were all picked up by drone. The word mesmerizing comes to mind when you look at the footage, because, as you can see, the fish beautifully weave in and out of one another to create whatever it is that they want. Their synchronized movement is almost hypnotic, like watching a living, breathing tapestry unfold in the water. It's unclear why they were so fixed in that area, but that's honestly not important because of how beautiful it all looks. Some speculate that they could have been evading predators, using their numbers to create confusion and protection in the form of a giant, shifting mass. Now, we have seen these kinds of swarms in the past with birds and bugs, and it's nice to see that fish can get in on the action as well. In moments like this, nature feels like art, unfolding in real time for anyone lucky enough to witness it. Number 19. Bicycle graveyard. Graveyards are always a place that people find weird or spooky depending on the time, place, and circumstance. A different drone in a different part of China was able to get footage of what could only be called a bicycle graveyard. The bikes in the shot were ones that were confiscated by the Chinese government, and then they were dumped there. And for the record, there are tens of thousands of bikes within this one singular place. Many of these bicycles were part of the massive bike-sharing schemes that surged in popularity a few years back, only to collapse when companies went bankrupt or the public lost interest. Rows upon rows of bikes, stacked in chaotic mounds, are a testament to the rise and fall of this once promising transportation model. Now, believe it or not, you do actually need a license to ride a bike in the country, and they'll take the ones that are not licensed. It's a stark reminder of how quickly trends can shift, leaving behind mountains of discarded materials. Plus, there were already plenty of bikes that had been abandoned due to people not really being enthralled with cycling anymore. When you look at the graveyard from above, you would never guess those were tens of thousands of bikes, and yet there they all are. It's eerie in its own way, like a mechanical wasteland frozen in time. Number 18. Kayaker and the orca. Now here's a video that is likely to brighten your day. Over in New Zealand, a drone operator was trying to get some nice pictures when it stumbled upon a kayaker doing their thing in the water. As they hovered over it, they and the kayaker were shocked when an orca appeared out of the water and seemed to greet the boater. The kayaker then got out of their kayak and proceeded to swim and play with the orca. It is a very dangerous thing. However, that orca seemed to be in a very playful mood and didn't mind things one little bit. In fact, the orca was having such fun that when the person left to paddle away in their boat, the whale actually followed them. Then some other orcas came along and decided to have some fun with the kayak. Crazy. Now, truly, this is a once-in-a-lifetime moment caught on camera. Sure, we see whales interacting with humans at certain water parks, but those are usually trained creatures. These were wild whales, and things could have gone quite wrong in a hurry. Instead, though, everything went right, and the results were truly beautiful. Number 17. UFO footage. Now, before you begin raging about whether UFOs are real or not, or whether a drone actually saw a UFO, I need to lay down some context here because this is not going to go how you think. You may recall that earlier in the year 2023 in the United States, the Pentagon had a hearing to highlight some of the potential UFO sightings that were actually known about by the government. This footage from the Middle East in 2022 was one of the pieces of footage that would be shown, and they do indeed highlight a UFO, not an alien perhaps, but a UFO. You have to remember that UFO actually stands for unidentified flying object, and that's exactly what we have here. It doesn't always mean alien spacecraft. It can be an object of spherical nature that's flying through the air without any obvious means of propulsion, and this one has been caught on the drone's camera. This footage was shot in July of 2022 from an American MQ-9 Reaper drone. Now, while we don't really know what the sphere is that's flying through the sky, the government agents that showed it didn't think that it was alien technology or anything of that like. There were actually 650 events shown at the Pentagon briefing, and very few of them did they determine anything of note. But that means that there were things of note that couldn't be explained, so that's rather impressive. Now, look, I know that UFO stories are a very hard thing to talk about because numerous people don't actually believe in them or aliens or anything of that like, and that is their right. But you can see this official footage from an official drone, and you can very easily tell that something is going on. Now, I don't really know what kind of something is going on, but it is something in the end. Number 16. Wind turbine solitude. Now, this next one is definitely a video that none of you were expecting, I can guarantee that. A drone near a school was doing a pass-by when, all of a sudden, it went by a wind turbine that was also near the school. And when it looked at the top, which was over 50 meters in the air, it spotted a man. Now, to be clear, this was not a man working on the turbine, as that technically wouldn't be all that odd. Instead, it was a man who was just sitting there, A Benedictine monk who works at a private Rhode Island school was just trying to have some solitude when the drone passed by and spotted him. Now, at first, Brother Joseph Byron was fine with the drone looking at him, but then it just kept on disturbing his peace, and as a result, he became annoyed. After all, he had gone up there to really enjoy the view. Now, I'm not joking about any of this. The man had been working at the school for a long time, and when he wanted some peace and quiet, he would climb up the turbine and then go have a nice peaceful lookout at the area. After the drone footage went viral, he was then contacted by past students who had recognized him. Now, on one hand, I can appreciate the man wanting some peace and quiet, picking a very unique spot to get some solitude. But on the other hand, that is still a pretty dangerous thing to go up to the top of a wind turbine just to get some alone time. Plus, I'm not exactly sure if it was even legal, not to mention that it might have inspired other people to do the same thing, and thus his solitude would now really be ruined. At least it was nice while it lasted. Now it's time for today's topic. During a routine geological survey using a drone in a remote mountain region, what the operator captured left viewers in awe and disbelief. As the drone was scanning a steep cliff face, it caught sight of a lone figure, remarkably, a woman climbing one of the narrowest parts of the cliff. What made the sight even more astonishing was the fact that she had no visible climbing gear or safety harness. The cliff, standing hundreds of feet tall with sheer vertical drops, seemed impossible to climb without equipment, yet this individual was scaling it with nothing more than her bare hands. The footage quickly spread across social media, sparking debates about the identity of the climber and how she managed such a feat. Experts have weighed in, emphasizing the extreme dangers of free climbing, especially in such isolated locations. As the drone continued to hover, capturing every tense moment, the climber made her way further up the cliff. Whether she reached the top remains unknown, as the footage cuts off before the end of her ascent. This discovery has raised many questions about the risks some individuals are willing to take in pursuit of adventure. Number 15. Reverse waterfall. Finally, I'll get back to the true natural order of things and show you something a little unnatural. Now, this is not a supernatural thing, but instead, it is something that does not naturally occur unless the situation is just right. In Utah, back in January, drone footage caught a local waterfall flowing in reverse. But how does something like that happen? Obviously, it comes down to nature. Strong winds were ripping across the state, creating these intense updrafts along cliff faces that caused the waterfall to spray backward. This rare phenomenon can sometimes occur during intense storms, or when certain weather conditions align perfectly. In other words, the water from the falls flowed downward, but when the wind caught it with such an updraft, it carried the water back up and over the cliff face. As you can see in this video, that is not something that happens just anywhere. The sheer force of the wind was so strong that it seemed to defy gravity, creating this awe-inspiring yet fleeting moment. There are major forces that are helping that water to go up and over where it had once come from. The drone operator even admitted that the drone had trouble staying in that area thanks to the high winds. It just goes to show how powerful and unpredictable nature can be. Number 14. Crop circle. Now, here we go again with aliens and the mystery of crop circles. Thanks to this drone footage, we can tell that this field of wheat was carved up to display a rather unique symbol, but what the point of the symbol is actually unclear. The farmer, whose field was ravaged by it, was not exactly happy that it had cost him a pretty penny in product. The intricate design stretched across a massive area, with perfectly symmetrical patterns that are difficult to achieve without the use of advanced tools. But don't worry, I'm not going to say that it was done by aliens or certain beings from beyond. We know that humans are perfectly capable of doing something like this for one reason or another. Some have even speculated that it's part of a local artist's project or perhaps a protest of some kind. Now, I don't know exactly why this was done, how it was done, or why this particular symbol was chosen, but they did have some impeccable precision no matter what had been used or who had done it. In the end, whether it was a prank, an art piece, or just someone trying to get their 15 minutes of fame, it certainly left its mark. Number 13. Rescue mission. Getting a bit more serious, I'll show you some footage from a rescue event from a drone that took place back in 2018. Thanks to that drone, an elderly man was able to survive a very scary incident. Publishing company owner Peter Pugh had been walking on Brancaster Beach one Saturday when he suddenly went missing after being separated from his group while trying to take a shortcut home. Now, obviously, he never made it home but instead got stuck in some nearby marshes and could not get out. At first, no one really thought anything of his disappearance, but when he didn't arrive home after 20 hours, people then went to look for the 75-year-old man. The only reason he was able to stay alive was because he knew he could drink the local creek water that was within reach, so he didn't panic. Thankfully, once the rescue operation began, a sergeant used a drone and was able to spot him within the marsh bed, kept a lock on him while the sergeant spread the word, and people were able to get to his location. Without the drone being the literal eye in the sky, the rescue team may have taken much longer, and equally as important, it would have put the man at more risk of dying. Number 12. Don't provoke the animals. Now, I previously showed you what happens when a drone is able to catch an animal out in the wild in its element, and it doesn't know the drone is there. But now I'm going to show you a video where an animal is captured within its own element, and it does know the drone is there, and it wasn't too happy about seeing it. This video was captured by a person named Dan Hurst, a camera operator for the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Back in 2021, he was trying to get some documentary footage about crocodiles for a special piece when things got, well, rather aggressive. Things were going well enough and he was getting some decent footage up close, but the problem was that the crocodiles were being rather skittish about the drone. Considering it's not something they would see every day, it wasn't exactly a surprise. But one crocodile then decided to stay relatively still, and Dan thought that this minute wouldn't mind being filmed. He was absolutely wrong because when the drone was in range, the crocodile leapt out of the water and snatched the drone within its jaws. Whoops! He first thought that he would never see that drone again, but the staff at the park actually found it washed up on the bank of the lagoon 2 weeks later. The drone was mostly intact, and the footage was able to be extracted. However, let this be an ultimate lesson to you. While it is all right to film animals in the wild, you shouldn't get too close to them because you just never know how they're going to react or interact with what you present to them. Number 11. Move those trees. The video that you're seeing right now is one that went viral, and it's not hard to see why. A drone from above was watching some trees that were in a forest when suddenly some of those trees began to violently shake. However, it's only a few of the trees, as though they're being targeted by something. Given the violent nature that the trees were being pushed around, many had wondered if something like Bigfoot was responsible. The shaking was so intense and specific that it fueled online speculation, with theories ranging from cryptids to mysterious creatures lurking in the woods. The video certainly made it seem as though something odd was going on, but that's where the other same video came into play. Someone recognized the location and then went to where the drone had caught the footage, and thanks to some keen investigation, they were able to find the original video from the drone. It turned out that the edited footage conveniently removed the visible machinery, heavy logging equipment responsible for the trees' movements. It clearly showed that there was some human equipment cutting down those trees. The viral video had been edited in such a way that the equipment could not be seen. So say it with me, that's why you don't trust everything you see on the internet. Number 10. Kangaroo Punch. For those of you who are fans of All Elite Wrestling, you may know that one of the most devastating moves that's been born as of late is the dreadful kangaroo kick. But when it comes to actual kangaroos, they don't mind punching their way out of a situation. And yes, this is indeed another situation where a drone decided to get too close to an animal. I mean, seriously, when will these operators learn? In this case, a drone was doing some aerial recon on a group of kangaroos, and it was going quite well. It spooked them just a little bit, but it was still a good distance away from them. Then, that drone got close to a mother and her joey. As a result, the mother took action, hopped over to it, and then pummeled the drone, knocking it to the ground. And here is your winner by KO, the mother kangaroo. Number 9. The tribes of Brazil. At first, you may not understand what I'm talking about with that statement. I mean, after all, Brazil is a country, it has a government, and the people there are mostly civilized. The key word there is mostly, and no, I'm not talking about gangs, cartels, or corrupt politicians. I mean that in Brazil, or more specifically within the Amazon rainforest, are indigenous tribes that have been living in their traditional ways for untold numbers of years. These tribes have developed unique customs, languages, and ways of life that remain completely untouched by the modern world. They have no desire to have any kind of contact with the outside world, and it's actually possible that they don't even know about modern society in general. In recent years, government and non-profit organizations have worked hard to protect these tribes by ensuring that their land remains off-limits to outsiders. As such, the people of Brazil have to be quite careful with how they attempt to watch these people, and that means using things like drones to get aerial footage of them. With this footage, they can prove that these tribes do still exist and, as a benefit to that, they can try to protect them from those who encroach upon their territory. Their isolation is a delicate balance, one that could be shattered if proper care isn't taken to ensure their safety. Number 8. Moose shedding antlers. Another thing that makes drones the perfect cameraman for certain people is that they can watch animals from afar and ensure they catch rare moments without fearing spooking them by the sound of their very human approach. For example, right now, picture a moose. When you think about moose, you may often think of them as big creatures with massive antlers that can withstand the cold and take out cars if somebody was dumb enough to run into one. But what if I told you that during the winter season, moose will literally shake off their antler? Would you believe me? Probably not. After all, it does sound kind of ridiculous. However, it's a very true statement, and this drone footage proves it. As you can see, the moose is just doing its thing in a snowy valley, and then it begins to shake. When it does, the antlers on its head snap off like twigs. Since when could they even do that? I mean, after all, they're strong enough to take down foes if something was to attack them, so how could they just straight up snap their antlers off with such ease? Well, it's because it's what they naturally do. You shouldn't forget those antlers are heavy, and so in snowy seasons, they'll shed them since they're not needed as much. Then, they'll regrow them when the springtime comes. The shedding process, also known as casting, is a normal event that occurs annually for many male moose and other antler species. Oh, and when I say the antlers are not needed, I don't mean that they're not needed for protection and whatnot. Rather, I'm referring to the fact that moose will use their antlers to attract a mate, and in the wintertime, the mating season is over, priorities and all that stuff. Number 7. Tiger strike. Sadly, the next piece of footage is not quite as beautiful as it is portrayed. This video went viral when it showed off the beauty of tigers in action as a group of them were being encouraged to chase a drone through the compound they were in. As a result, some beautiful shots would be taken. The tigers eventually did get the drone and took it down before leaving it be after they realized that it was not a bird or some kind of other flying food. At first glance, the video seemed to be a harmless bit of entertainment, showing the playful side of these majestic creatures. However, upon closer inspection, questions started to arise about the location and intent behind the footage. It would later be revealed that the footage was taken at a tiger farm in China. That's a place where they raise tigers in order to get money from tourists and then sell their parts to interested parties later on. These farms are often criticized for exploiting animals under the guise of conservation, but the reality is far more sinister. That's not animal conservation by any means. That's actually a breeding ground for slaughter in a way that's not right, and many people have called out the video after they found out the facts. The truth behind the viral video has left a dark stain on what initially appeared to be a fun, lighthearted scene. Number 6. Spotting someone in need. This drone made a chilling discovery after spotting something on the side of a mountain. As noted, drones are very useful at getting great scenic shots of an area that most people can't see most of the time due to being on the ground or unable to reach a certain place to look over an area. In this first clip, a man named Babu and his friends were doing some hiking in India when the worst came to pass. Babu slipped and fell down the side of the mountain. The twist was that he lived and actually was holed up in a literal hole in the side of the cliff face. The problem was that while he was safe, he could not go down, he couldn't go up, and he needed to be rescued. Early attempts to get him had failed because of the specific place that he was in. Helicopters couldn't reach him, and they couldn't just send someone to climb up after him. The reason they knew where he was specifically was because they were able to launch drones to look and see where he was, so a plan could be formed. But many attempts at getting him out had failed. It took an intervention from the National Disaster Response Force in order to finally rescue him, and by that point, he had been in that hole for 40 hours. Can you imagine being stuck in a hole for that amount of time without any food or water or so much as room to wiggle around? Your body can tend to lock up if you're not getting proper movement, and obviously going almost 2 days without any resources was not good for him. While he was able to get free of his confinement, it was absolutely a rough situation, and the pictures that he took of his misadventure proved it. The drone became a key part of getting him down, and for that, we should all be grateful. However, let this also be a lesson to all of you out there that climbing up rock walls can be dangerous, even when you're doing it with friends. Number 5. Plainside. Now, I'm not going to deny that this next one is the aftermath of a near-fatal situation. Picture this, you're on a plane, and you're about to land at your destination. Everything's gone smoothly up to that point, but right when you land, the plane veers off the runway, and it happens to be heading for a cliff that's nearby. That's exactly what took place with this airplane, and it's honestly a miracle that it didn't crash into the waters below. As the plane skidded to a stop, just feet from the edge, passengers described the sheer terror of watching the ground disappear beneath them. It's the kind of scenario that sends chills down your spine, the realization that only a few feet made the difference between life and death. The airline industry has a host of safety protocols in place, but even the best-laid plans can sometimes go awry due to factors like weather conditions or human error. Naturally, those who were inside the plane were panicked, but thankfully, they all got out alive and without a whole lot of injury. This incident serves as a reminder that even though plane travel remains statistically the safest mode of transportation, the unexpected can still happen. It just goes to show you that while plane travel is the safest form of travel, especially with modern advances, it doesn't mean that they're immune from disasters taking place. They can happen at any moment. I'm not saying it's going to happen on your next flight, but the possibility is always there. Number 4. Monkeying around. After everything you've seen, you would think that these drone operators would realize that you don't want to get too close to an animal unless you want something to go wrong. And surely enough, here we are showcasing yet another one. In this clip, a drone decides to get close to a chimpanzee enclosure. Except that the monkeys see the drone coming, and when monkey see, monkey do, something bad happens to the drone. One of the chimps whacked it with a stick and sent it hurtling to the ground. Then, the chimpanzee picked up the drone and gave it some rather unique close-up shots. Interestingly, while the chimps studied the strange object, its troops seemed unbothered, as though this was just another day of fending off technology. It goes to show that wild animals, even those in enclosures, don't take kindly to invasive gadgets. Eventually, the drone was retrieved, but it was severely damaged from its encounter with the inquisitive primate. I'm sure that next time, that drone operator will simply observe the monkeys from afar. Number 3. Your close-up shot. It's not really surprising that certain people at weddings would want a truly lasting memory, outside of beautiful pictures and a nice after-party. For this couple, they decided it would be a fantastic idea to hire a photographer to get a drone to capture some unique footage of them together after their big moment. And surely enough, at the start, things are going well, and the photographer is getting some nice dramatic footage. But then, he begins to lose control of the drone, and it goes wild, crashing right into the couple. Yes, this is why drone technology isn't everywhere just yet. While they are beautiful machines and can do a lot of good, as you've seen, they can also be quite hard to control. So, the next time you want a great video or picture at your wedding, maybe just stick with the regular old camera. Number 2. Crop circle again. Now, in Italy, someone decided they wanted to make a crop circle that depicted Kim Jong-un. No, I'm not joking, and here it is in all its glory. The crazy thing is, the guy who made it was an artist who just used his tractor to create the portrait, and it wasn't the first world leader he had done this with in the past. This artist, known for his bizarre yet captivating works, has previously created similar crop portraits of other political figures like Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, making quite the international stir. I'm not really sure how someone wakes up one day and simply decides to make a crop circle of an infamous world leader, but he did. And you have to admit, it's a good likeness. The sheer scale of the artwork is impressive, stretching across a massive field, so it can only really be seen clearly from an aerial view. And if you can't tell, those are missiles above his head, just in case the imagery wasn't already politically charged enough. Number 1. The Black-Eyed Girl. Sadly, I am not going to dive into something realistic again just yet because earlier this year, a drone caught footage of what many feel is definitive proof of a local legend in the woods at Chase, especially since there was a killer that was once said to have taken the life of a 7-year-old girl and then buried her within those woods. Ever since then, there have been sightings of a black-eyed girl, and the drone footage that you're seeing now has been claimed to be further proof of those hauntings. Naturally, all kinds of ghost hunters and supernatural investigators have combed those woods looking for more proof of the said black-eyed girl. And if you're curious, the reason that she allegedly has those black eyes isn't only because she's a ghost, but because, during the time of her death, diphtheria was spreading throughout the UK like mad, and she may have well had it. A side effect of that disease is having your eyes go black. Whether this is actually proof of the supernatural is not really for anyone to say, but a lot of people were spooked when this footage came out, and I can tell you that for sure. That wraps up our exploration of the world through drone cameras and the various sites they've captured. Were you surprised by some of the things they spotted? Which captures were you glad to see? If you know of other significant moments caught by drones, be sure to share them in the comments section below. Don't forget to check out all the other cool content appearing on the screen right now. See you next time.